So, welcome to Start with Collaboration with the wonderful, the amazing superstar Lois Sonstegard, author of Start with Collaboration, and up to many other exciting things to help you collaborate. Maybe collaboration is the secret that you have been missing, that you really need to take your business, your family, your community, your nonprofit, your church to the very next level. So today, Lois is going to share with us 5 keys that are absolutely essential if you want to be successful in collaboration. And these are things that you will be able to do at the end of listening to this podcast. So pay attention, take notes, because this will be useful immediately. I'm Aurora Winter, the creator of the Spoken Author Method and the founder of Same Page Publishing. You can find Lois online at Start with Collaboration. And just before we launch into the 5 keys you absolutely must know to collaborate effectively, I want to let you know that this is part of creating Lois's book, Start with Collaboration, that is coming out very soon. And we want to hear from you. We'd love to hear your stories of what worked with collaboration, what didn't work with collaboration. We want you to be part of this unfolding creative process of collaboratively creating her book, Start with Collaboration. And again, you can share those stories with us on LinkedIn, or you can connect with Lois at startwithcollaboration.com. But enough ado, let's get right into it, Lois. So there's 5 keys to successful collaboration. Tell us about that. And before we do that, though, let's just set the stage. Why does collaboration matter more today than ever before?
I think collaboration is more important today than ever because it is more important than capital. Most people think that cash is king, right? But the truth is collaboration is king. Think about it for a moment. How do we generate money? It's through our innovation, creativity, sales, our knowledge, technology, and cash results from those throughputs, right? So far, what leaders have done is they've used various tools like strategic planning, market analysis, competitive analysis to predict the future. There's an assumption that a small group of executives at the very top can confidently strategize the future direction of countries, of organizations, of communities, right? But following this model, we've generated a lot of wealth. That is true, capitalizing on labor. And we grow and shrink labor as a result, as our quarterly financial projections require us to do it. So there's a fluctuation that we've created as a result of that. We also have abused and used our environment for the sake of efficiencies and profitability. And that comes out of that industrial model that we've grown up with. We've been taught it. And because of that industrial model and of that competitive model, we've innovated, we've made incredible discoveries and advances in biotechnology, engineering, medicine, software development, AI we're talking about a lot these days. And we've harnessed and pushed our boundaries. So the problem is that sometimes these advances come at a great cost to our employees, our shareholders, and to our employees. I think the other thing, Aurora, is today we also face an additional challenge, and that's the velocity of change.
Yeah.
Right? Change is happening so fast. The world is changing with a speed that we've never seen before. In the industrial model, a few people at the top could make decisions about the future. With the speed of change, it's no longer possible for a few people to have the breadth and the depth of knowledge or experience to really address the complex issues that we're dealing with today.
Well, exactly right. So competition has taken us a certain level, but now for a quantum leap forward, people need to harness the power of collaboration. Two minds are better than one, or 200 companies collaborating is better than one beating a drum all by itself. Exactly.
It's so
Did you
true.
want to
And
say
then
more about the value of collaboration, or do you want to dive into the 5 keys?
I do. I just want to say a couple more things relative to that. The other is there's today we see geopolitical risk like we've never seen before. And we see our economies also responding. Supply chains have not normalized. We have a lot of questions about what's going to happen with labor supply. And so we're always adjusting. Social norms are also transforming in all of our communities. And these events require us to think differently. Solutions aren't going to come unless we have diversity of thought and a depth of perspective. And a small group of people probably won't be able to do that. So, with all the forces impacting business today, businesses have to adjust, right?
They do have to adjust. Excuse me.
The problem is that
That's like such an obvious thing. Well, I think on the personal level, collaboration and connection is happening at warp speed, whether it is LinkedIn or Snapchat or Instagram or YouTube. But larger companies are a little bit slower to take advantage of the hyper connectivity in our world today. So let's get right into these 5 important keys for collaboration. What is the first key that is for ideal collaboration or successful collaboration in your experience, Lois?
so the very first one is choose the right partner.
Mm-hmm. And how do we go about knowing what the right partner looks like?
Well, we have a variety of myths and perspectives about what is a good partner. And I think every one of us have some perspective about it because we've had marriages that have worked or not worked. We may have had groups, teams that we've been a part of that have worked or haven't worked. And so we go, okay, this is my perspective about partners. So I think most people think that partnerships are about dividing up the pie. The truth is, partnerships are about expanding the pie.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. So partnerships are not about dividing up the pie. Partnerships are about expanding the pie. Tell me more. That's juicy.
So here's what else is interesting about that. Not only do you expand the pie, but Deloitte's research on collaboration says that people who collaborate actually are also happier. Isn't that amazing?
That's awesome. So I think that's very relatable. And I think a lot of businesses make the mistake of, because they had one collaboration that went wrong, that they assume collaboration is just not for them. But it could just simply be that they chose the wrong partner. Just like marriage is a wonderful thing, only if you choose the right partner. So do you have some red flags that people could consider as they're assessing whether or not this would be a good partnership for them in collaboration in a business
I
setting?
sure do. And before I do that, let me just say a few things I think that are really important for choosing a good partner or a partner that's going to work well. One is shared values. The things that are really important: honesty, integrity, how you view another person, respect, those kinds of things. Core values, do you share them? Second is, do you have a shared mindset of generosity and gratitude? If you don't have a perspective of wanting to give, you perhaps aren't a good partner. Positive attitude. I think we take that for granted a lot of times. And Aurora, I didn't realize how important that was until I was doing a photo shoot a number of years ago in Hollywood. And this was with a manufacturing company that I had at the time. And we needed to have 10 models for the photo shoot, but we had 200 that we needed to select from that had been sent to us by various agencies. And I said, oh my goodness, this is going to take forever. And my
Mm.
photographer, who was an old Marine, said, oh no, this will take us 2 hours. He
Huh.
said, we will select on attitude. And we do that by asking 3 questions. 1, what's your name? 2, what's your address? 3, what was your last gig? If they explode, they get angry, they push back, wrong attitude, move on. And
Mm.
I learned actually you can sort people very quickly that way. And when we didn't follow that advice, I got burned. So
Wow.
positive attitude. A
And that's
willingness,
very, very easy to assess. You can assess attitude quickly and with just a couple of questions.
like that, you sure can, can't you?
Yeah.
And then a willingness to look for opportunity and walk into it. Another thing I think about choosing a good partner is a person who really values life. By
Mhm.
that, I mean, values it so that, do I respect all levels within an organization, all contributions from around me, or can I only respect people that are like me, of my status, of my economic group?
Right, right.
And then are they already in relationships with other people that are working? Because there are some people that are never in relationships because they can't ever have a working relationship. So, right?
Yeah, or people around them burst into tears. It's not a good sign. There's something amiss with that. Would you
Not a good
say,
sign. So here
oh,
are some of the red flags, I think.
okay. Mm-hmm.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who always are right. There's that saying, I'm not a bad, I'm right because I'm not a bad person. If I were a bad person, I'd be wrong. So there's that mindset, if I can't be wrong because I don't want to be a bad person.
Hmm.
And then you can't really talk about issues or work things through.
Or you can't progress.
You can't progress. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's some people that just have a win-lose mindset. I win, you lose. And I
So
come from a competitive family. We, even Parcheesi, when the kids were small, the kids learned very fast they needed to win. So we grow up with that. I've got to win and you get to lose.
yeah, some
You know,
people really value winning over everything else. Would you say that it's somewhat similar to choosing a spouse? I read research that said first marriages, opposites attract, but second marriages, people tend to choose more similar people who they're perhaps more harmonious with, or maybe they just got burnt the first time and decided to do the opposite. Do you think choosing a partner in collaboration can use some of the same filters that you would use when you're dating or when you're choosing somebody to be a spouse?
I think that you can use a lot of the same things, because if you're, and I think it goes back to the whole thing about values again,
Hmm.
um, and your perspective of one another. I think the other is really liking each other,
Yeah. And
Be-
respect. I think you need to respect each other, or it's a non-starter.
right? And then if there's that sense of shaming and blaming, I'm not responsible, I'll let you be responsible, that's a problem.
That's a problem. That's a red flag for sure. All right. So step number one is choosing the right partner. Absolutely. You've given us some very useful red flags. I'm sure you could go on. What's step number two in successful collaboration?
That is, define the result that you want and put boundaries around that relationship that you're creating. So the myth in collaboration is I lose my identity. The truth is, in collaboration, I gain a strong identity. So here's what's interesting from some of marketing research. Marketing experts, and this comes from Seller's Choice, says that when you collaborate around branding, you actually enhance your exposure.
Mm.
You increase inspiration for your product. You build a larger network. You save money and you add value. Think of that also in relation to what we talked about last week with the work that's being done on change and network by by
That
Damien's.
was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some real positives that come from that. We fear it, but actually it builds. And it flips that script of who we are in our favor. So Founder Online is a group that talks about collaborating with branding. And they say that when you're collaborating, you're still driven to achieve results, but you've removed the competitive anxiety that comes with it. Instead, you and your competition or the people you're working with are suddenly united in the same goal, and success is suddenly a joint venture. So I think there's so many opportunities. We just
Yeah.
have to be willing to see it, right?
And what would defining the desired result look like or sound like? Could you give us an example of a good collaborative desired result that's effectively defined? Would it be a SMART goal? Would it be a financial goal? Would it be a X by Y time? What might that sound like?
I think it could be any of that. And as we move into the near future, every group or industry, I think, is going to be addressing things differently. I just looked at a Forbes article that came out yesterday talking about what's happening in healthcare right now. Their prediction is that 75% of those working in the healthcare industry, in nursing and in medicine, are going to exit or look for other kinds of roles within healthcare within the next 5 years.
75%?
That's
Wow.
pretty well.
That's a
And who
tsunami
knows?
of people leaving.
Who knows the accuracy of, those are projections, right?
Mhm.
So will it happen? We don't know. But for that, then you could say that one of the things that you want to collaborate around is how do we create a labor supply that will be there for our future? What are the building blocks? Can we come together to create it?
Yeah.
Because what's projected doesn't have to happen. We can create it differently.
I would offer, see what you think, that it really helps if the goal is defined, as you've said, define desired result, and is not vague, like increasing employee satisfaction is vague. Whereas, getting feedback from employees that are 75% of them want to stay for 5 years. That is more specific. Or growing our company's revenues by 200% in the next 10 years. That's specific. So I think you want something you can tick off and say, we did it. Because I think if people are vague at the beginning, then they could actually not be pulling in the same direction. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think a big one is cutting costs. As you collaborate and you combine resources, you're going to cut costs. What does that mean? You have revenue and cash to put into areas that you need for growth.
Oh, well, you're getting on to the third step already. I want to ask one more question about step number 2.
Yeah.
Step number 2 is define desired result and boundaries. How do you find boundaries?
Boundaries, I think, are huge. And there's boundaries in terms of who I am, who my company is. So if you look at a family, we define it in terms of my family came from Norway. So we had this Norwegian ethnic background. I grew up in Japan, so I have this Asian perspective. So don't take away from me that sense of identity of who I am. That's a core of who I am and that I can bring to you. Also, my sense of values. It's really important to me to be able to have, well, if I were of certain religious groups, being able to go to church or to be able to go to the synagogue on the Sabbath, that might be important. So having boundaries that we don't go past, we don't infringe upon what's important for that person. They're not walls. We're not building walls. They're our identity, our attitudes, our beliefs, our feelings.
So what I'm hearing from you, it's more like, here's what's on the table and here's what's not.
Correct.
So it's not on the table to take away your Norwegian heritage or the fact that you've got this lovely perspective from growing up in Japan. So that makes good sense. Okay, so thank you for elaborating on key number 2, define desired result and boundaries. And what's the third one, which you started to go into there, I think?
Okay, so for successful collaboration, number 3, you want to leverage each other's resources and expertise and relationships. The myth is that when I share my knowledge, I'm disadvantaged. The truth is, when I share my knowledge, I build my resources. So here's some interesting research. There was research that was done some time ago now. It's a little bit old, but nonetheless very interesting. And it was done on the inner city schools comparing African-American students with Asian students. And in the groups, they took students with the same SAT scores and the same scholastic performance. So these were all high-performing students that had done very well scholastically in school. And what they did was they looked at them in college and they said, how are these students performing? What they found was the Asian students outperformed the others. Why? Because they got together and shared their knowledge.
Mm,
So isn't that interesting?
that is interesting. So they were collaborating, and that actually was their competitive advantage.
That was their competitive advantage. Yeah.
So what sort of resources, expertise, and relationships are best leveraged in collaboration, and what are the ones that you think are not on the table? So I'm imagining, some client relationships might be on the table and some might not. Some supplier relationships might be on the table and some might not. Do you have a way for us to sort of think through that?
Sure. And I think that's a process that you probably are going to constantly be working on a little bit. Let me give you an example of that. I have a colleague that I'm working with, and in terms of some of what I am wanting to do with growing my business. And she has said, well, here are some resources I have within my contact group. Would they be helpful if I connected you? I don't own them. They're not mine. She makes an introduction. I can, by who I am, make that work or not work. And that relationship, her ability to share with me, is based on my ability to respect that those are her clients. And I'm building a tangential relationship alongside. I'll go back and inform her. This is what we're doing. This is how it's working. Right? You can't just grab something, run, and ignore what the person has contributed to your success. Then you're lacking gratitude. And pretty soon people say, well, you're on your own, forget it. I'm not going to help you anymore. Right?
And this is more of an informal relationship. You're not formally collaborating with the person who provided these contacts, or are you?
No, you're absolutely right. This is an informal relationship. On a formal relationship, though, it's not too dissimilar. I may say, let's work with these customers jointly because what we're doing is similar. We can cut our costs, our marketing, whatever it is that we're putting into that, we might be able to reduce those costs by doing it together. But
Well,
I also,
go
yes,
ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there more?
but I have to also respect that it's a shared group. I don't own them. They're not mine necessarily.
Well, partly because we're collaborating on your book, Start with Collaboration, and we're doing these podcasts each week, you've really brought thinking about collaboration to the forefront of my mind. And so just yesterday, for example, and everybody I think can do this or do something similar, someone wanted to interview me and do a collaboration or a cross promotion. And it didn't fit for me because of the timeline. It was too quick. And so then instead of just saying, no, thank you, appreciate it, I said, no, thank you, I appreciate it. And how about this person who is my friend and my client? I think they would be a really great fit for this online training. And he was happy and she was happy and I was happy. And it cost me nothing, but just thinking, how can I benefit others? How can I make my life make a little bit more of a difference? How can I contribute? So I think that's an attitude. I'm not formally collaborating on that. I don't want anything if something comes out of it. I just wanted to contribute. And that felt really, really nice. And yet we know how people work through the law of reciprocity, both of those people probably feel a little bit better about Aurora Winter. And who knows, if something else comes up another time, they might go, oh, that Aurora, she's a helpful person. So that's one example. And I think we can all have more of an attitude of graciousness, of gratitude, of spreading the opportunities. What would you want to add to that?
Absolutely. It's that spirit of generosity. I don't need it all for myself. So on the other hand, I've had the experience of opening doors for somebody and they then taking that market for themselves and going in a different direction. And
Wow.
you look at that and you go, okay, well, that's not a collaborator. I won't do that again, not with that individual. So sorting who you're going to have this relationship with becomes really important, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting too, because it wasn't on this podcast, but on a previous podcast, you were talking about the short-term versus the long-term payoff. And you were emphasizing that maybe collaborators don't win in the very short term, but they win in the long term. Could you speak to that?
Yes, I'd love to, because I think it's the difference. It's very Western, I think, to think short term. And other cultures, like the Asian cultures, are much more long term. But when we think short term, it's I've got to win because I've got to make my quarterly numbers right now. Otherwise, I may lose my job. I may not, the funding may decrease. My venture capital may look at me differently. So there are real pressures that create this short-term focus. But when we live in that short-term focus, we then make choices that I'm going to win at almost all cost. And I'm going to take from you in order to make that happen. And taking usually implies market share.
It's kind of a scarcity mentality, wouldn't you say? It's
It
like,
is very much so.
yeah. Well, another small example. So I went for a walk this morning with my older brother, and his expertise is helium, hydrogen, and anything that needs to be built or anything scientific. These are not my areas of expertise, but he had a challenge with communication with some of his staff members. Now, communication is my area of expertise. So I offered to have lunch with these employees and gift them some tools and techniques that they could use to communicate better. And why am I doing that? Again, it's collaboration. It's like, well, I have some expertise. I'm happy to allow him to leverage it. Why not? I want to make a bigger difference. And goodness knows if I have any questions about hydrogen or helium, he will help me. But do you have some examples that people can just follow a little bit more what you mean about key number 3 to successful collaboration is to leverage each other's resources, expertise, and relationships?
Sure. So when I was doing some work in healthcare, there was a period of time where we were working at how do we decrease mortality rates with women and children in this particular region of the United States. And there was no one group or person who was going to solve the problem. It was too big. It was community problems. It was various groups, ethnic groups that were congregated as in parts of this community, and their practices were different. We had biases from politicians that were impacting things. We had policies within the university hospital system. We had community hospitals. We had local physician practices. There were a lot of different players. So we looked at, okay, there's a knowledge problem here in some of the area that's causing this, just some basic things. How can we not we as the expert come in with all the answers, but how can we use each other's knowledge to build up the knowledge base of everybody? It's when you approach it that way, first of all, you had many more resources. Secondly, people are much more receptive to listening. And
Yeah.
third, when they are willing to listen, they're much more willing to adapt and to change. And the interesting thing is the experts realized they didn't know everything. They
Funny.
had to learn.
Yeah. And what was the result? It was successful, wasn't it?
Oh, it was incredibly successful. It was a community that came back to, when we first started, they were about 4 times the national average in terms of mortality rates, perinatal mortality rates. And they came back within the averages of the United States within about 18 months.
That's a lot of
So that's
lives
pretty
saved.
remarkable what collaboration can do.
Lives literally saved through
Lives saved and people honored. It was done without a lot of cost to people individually. It was also done without a lot of money because simply people were being leveraged.
Wow, that's a great example. Okay, so key number 3 is leverage each other's resources, expertise, and relationships. What's key number 4 to successful collaboration?
Well, I think you can widen and see new lucrative opportunities. This is the infinite perspective. It's not a scarcity world, it's a world of abundance,
I
right?
love this. I love that. Mhm.
So the world of opportunity is shrinking, is the myth that we operate in coming out of the industrial age. But the truth is, the world of opportunity is really expanding. So let me give you some examples of that. So if you look at the past, what we were just talking about, Aurora, our focus was short term. It was based on that scarcity mindset, right? But when we take a look at opportunity, we see abundance everywhere. So, when you start looking for creating something as simple as an art project, you start seeing, oh, okay, that could be added. I have that resource. That person could do that and make this a better art project, right?
Mhm.
And so you start seeing a lot of things, resources that are available. But if you don't ask the question and you don't look, you don't ever see it.
Exactly.
So I think another thing that goes with that is we have often defined in that old model, in the industrial age model, that growth comes by increasing profits and increasing our status, right?
Mhm.
But when we look at opportunity, growth is defined by the conditions that support flourishing life and flourishing each other. So it's not just about me getting better, it's about everybody getting better. So I was speaking yesterday with a company which grew tremendously during the COVID situation. They'd made some brilliant strategies, brilliant moves that allowed them to outperform and come out of the COVID situation financially very strong. One of the things that they did right from the outset was they changed their payment system. So those people that were working in the warehouses, they gave them what they called combat pay, 2.5 times their normal salary.
Wow.
Who isn't going to work? Not only that, but they put a 401k in place for them. Not only that, they made sure they had health care. What else did they do? They made sure they had psychiatric insurance in case they went into a depression or anxiety or whatever.
Wow.
So that's, I'm going to grow, I'm going to thrive, and you are too. That's that mindset of
That's a
opportunity.
great example. So by being very generous and helping their employees thrive, the company didn't lose money. It made more money. Amazing. Really great example. Well, when I was taking my MBA, one of the courses I quite liked is a professor came and taught us about negotiation. So, I'm an entrepreneur. A lot of other people in the MBA were entrepreneurs, but some were just, engineers. They had only been in university their whole life. They didn't have any, real world practical experience. And what I noticed was when I would negotiate with a 28-year-old, engineer, super smart, uh, it was blocked because while I'm always thinking, how can I expand the pie? He was very positional and trying to get more of the pie and just kind of unable mindset wise to expand the pie, of which there were many opportunities to do in this mock negotiation. Whereas when I negotiated with somebody else who had been around the block a few times, or maybe just had a different mindset, we together collaborated, first expanded the pie and then split it. And that was the winning formula. But it's kind of interesting. You might even want to role play this and just see where you can find new opportunities and where you can expand the pie rather than fighting over the size that it is or appears to be right now. What do you think about that? What's your experience?
I love it. I absolutely love it because, it really is a choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
You both had the same situation, you both had the same resources potentially available. You just saw more of them. You saw how to use them in a more exponential way. And that by sharing them, more would grow, and rather than that they would decrease.
Yeah.
But it's a choice, right?
And it wasn't a win-lose. Like if we expand the pie, we can both have more. It's not a win-lose at all. And I think this is what's I am just so excited about your work with collaboration, with the collaborators and the books that we're working on together, because I think this is the most valuable and under-leveraged, underutilized thing is how can you expand the pie? And you probably have already thought of the ways you can expand the pie with your own limited resources in your own company, just working by yourself. But with collaboration, the sky's the limit, really. Worldwide opportunities, all kinds of magical, wonderful things, and things are growing so quickly and exponentially. It just seems like almost like a genie in the lamp that you want to rub and make your 3 collaboration wishes. You don't want to miss out on that.
Well, I think the other thing that goes with that, Aurora, is that when you are with somebody who has that kind of mindset of being expansive and looking at opportunity, it's contagious.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of it.
Exactly. Absolutely. Shall we move on to key number 5 to successful collaboration?
We sure can. So the 5th key to collaboration is commit to community of collaborators and your ongoing learning. So the myth is that collaboration takes too much time. The truth is, it does not just take time, it takes action. So here's what's important about that. Action is active, it's dynamic, it's fluid. It puts you into a state of flow. Remember our discussion last week on flow?
I love the flow conversation. People have got to go listen to that podcast about flow and collaboration.
Well, here's what's important about that is when you're in flow, you're in momentum. And when you're in momentum, you're creating and growing. Deloitte found in their research that they did in Australia on the benefits and impact of collaboration on the GDP of Australia. They found that there was when people collaborated, there was a savings in terms of time, the quality of their work increased, and the amount of wasted time decreased so significantly that if you took those companies that collaborated, there was an added value to the Australian economy of 46 billion Australian dollars per year.
46 billion per year to the Australian economy. Oh my gosh, that's huge.
So how can you afford not to collaborate?
Exactly. Well, and I also like there's really 2 points, I guess, in this 5th key. I want to highlight the ongoing learning. Like I'm taking courses all the time. I think that the days are past where you get your degree from university or trade school, if you go to trade school, and then you're done for the rest of your life. That is insane. That is ridiculous. Things are changing so rapidly. I think we all need, well, we'll all be well served to have an attitude of lifelong learning. As you know, Lois, I'm taking improv classes through Second City. I'm also devoting time to learning about AI. I'm also devoting time to learning about Kickstarter and crowdfunding. And it's exciting and interesting for me. I love learning. As you know, that's one of my Clifton strengths is learner, but everyone is really well served by choosing to think of learning as an ongoing process. What do you think about that?
In today's world, if we're not learning, our mind is shrinking and the other people around us are going to pass us by. Remember, the world is moving fast.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't keep up, there's nobody to blame but ourselves. So I can't agree with you more, Aurora. We have to learn. And, it's exhausting sometimes. I can remember when I first started working online and I learned some of the things that I needed to do. I would walk around the house in my office and I go, you mean I have to learn that too? That?
Yeah.
And every day was a discovery, a new discovery of what I needed to learn. And then one day you decide to embrace it and it becomes fun instead of work.
Yeah. Well, I find the key, well, what helps me is I allocate time each day for learning. There is a learning time or a reading time at the end of the workday. There's an hour devoted for that. So because it's on my calendar and it's a habit, it gets done. Otherwise, if you do it in the spare time, there doesn't seem to be any of that. But let's also talk about the commitment to a community of collaborators. I love this philosophy of commitment. One is key for any kind of success, but connecting with a community who have similar values, in this case, committing to a community of collaborators. How would people do that? What would that look like?
I think, first of all, it can be done very informally. But I think if you're going to really use this to build a stronger business, you want to formalize it. You want to put together a group of businesses that are of like mind or have the ability to contribute important, necessary resources for each other's growth. So sometimes that could be very, very different, diverse groups of businesses coming together. And then you commit to, this is around what we're going to share. And I'm committed to doing what's necessary for us as a group to grow. That's an attitude that is new for most of us, and it's a learning process. And I think that when people do it, there's something really kind of fun about it. It's exciting to know that you've helped somebody, but as you do that, every time I help somebody, I find I grow, I learn, I expand, I benefit. So in the end, really, I'm the one who probably comes out the furthest ahead.
I know, I laugh. I've got several people that I've got standing calls with every 2 weeks because I would like to help them. But every time they say something and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Thank you. Or it's like, it's not possible in my experience to help another without also being helped. So, this community of collaborators, that could be your church group. It could be, perhaps a Zoom call every 2 weeks with a group of people. It could be like you have a LinkedIn community that you're doing various things with. But what I'm most excited about, and I know you don't want to fully spill the beans on it, but I am really excited, Lois, that you are actually going to be solving this problem for people and setting up communities of like-minded people who can collaborate together. So more on that soon. But if you want to give us a little sneak peek, now would be the time.
Sure. So when we bring businesses together, they need to be of like mind, shared values. So some basic things need to be in place, like integrity, spirit of generosity, things we've talked about in terms of what's important for partners, right? So you screen for that, because if you don't screen for it and you have a pariah in a group that is trying to work together, it will destroy the group. It doesn't work. So you need to sort that out. So we'll bring businesses together who are committed to growth, growing each other, and it'll be around a specific thing. So for some, it might be dealing with supply chain. For some, it might be more labor issues. For some, it might be what they're doing in terms of their marketing and sharing some of those resources. So it could be a lot of different things. Specific thing, though, that they are going to work on together. So everybody's clear about the purpose for coming together, right? And then meeting regularly in order to achieve the goals. And they're very specific. They need to be set out for on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis, so they're actually achieved.
I think that's going to really accelerate results, cash results, happiness results. We'll see. So stay tuned for finding out more about that. But in the meantime, now we've got to the part of the podcast that's one of my favorite parts, story time. Do you have a story to tell us that goes with our content today about successful collaboration?
Oh, I do.
Woohoo!
When I was thinking about collaboration and partners, I guess, and some of the challenges that sometimes we have in trying to do things alone, it reminded me of a vacation that our family decided to go on to Switzerland to visit my son and his family. So the whole family went, my daughter, her husband, my husband and I, we set off for Switzerland. It was Christmas and New Year's. We were having a fabulous time. And we decided that we would go to the Austrian Alps and ski. Now, I had been skiing for about 15 years, so a bit rusty, never in the Alps. And so we go up the gondola the first day. We did choose the blue area. So we thought it was going to be safe, and got to the top. And yes, the blue was there, but we had to go through the Black Diamond first. I took one look at that and I said, no way. I have no desire to come home from this vacation with broken arms and broken legs. So I sat down on my butt and I said, I'm going down this rather large mountain on my butt. It took quite a while. And people were horrified. I mean, you could see the people above watching and thinking, what is this crazy lady doing? Well, I made it to the bottom, immediately went to the school and signed up for lessons. And it was a wonderful learning. Don't do something alone. You may think you've got the skills, but until you're in it, you may not have the knowledge or skills that you need. And you need people to come alongside you and help you so you're successful. With the right skills, the right knowledge, the right help, that was a wonderful vacation. But without it, it would have been a disaster.
I love that story. So don't try this at home, kids. when you're rusty, get training first, or you might be taking a very long time to go down on your butt. I love that story.
Well, and the same is true in our business. We see something is changing, we need to do something, and we jump in, and then we find that we're over our heads. If we're in a collaborative group with other businesses, undoubtedly somebody will have had a similar experience, that they've already navigated that, and they have wonderful tips. So
exactly. and it can be people make the same rookie mistakes, and once you've done it a few times, or maybe you've done it for decades, it's so easy to help the other person avoid those very common pitfalls. I love that story. That's good. All right, so to recap, the 5 keys to successful collaboration are: number 1, choose the right partner; number 2, define the desired result and your boundaries; number 3, leverage each other's resources, expertise, and relationships; number 4, Widen. See how you can find new lucrative opportunities together. That's the infinite game that Lois was talking about. And number 5, commit to a community of collaborators and to ongoing learning. So those are your 5 keys. You can start implementing them immediately. They will make a difference immediately. We would love to hear from you. So connect with us on LinkedIn. Go to Lois's webpage, startwithcollaboration.com. We want to hear your stories. Do you have another story about going down a ski hill on your butt when you got into a little bit too advanced terrain, or some version of that? Have you had success or challenges with one of these 5 keys that we talked about today? We would love to hear from you. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we are collaboratively creating Lois Sonstegard's book, Start with Collaboration, and we'd love for you to be part of the collaboration. And if you do share a story that we put in the book, we will be sending you a complimentary copy, of course, and acknowledgement in the book itself. So please send us your stories, connect with us on LinkedIn. Let's collaborate with this book, Start with Collaboration. Next week, we're going to get into the blueprint for collaboration. So today we set the executive summary, the overview, the broad sweeps, and tune in for the next podcast, and Lois will guide us through some of the more advanced techniques that you will want to take advantage of. So, do you have a book to recommend for us today?
I do. And before I do that, I want to just say, remember, collaboration builds wealth. That's what this has been all about. So here's one of the books. It's written by Mark Monchuk. It's called The Culture of Opportunity.
Culture of Opportunity. And the subtitle is How to Grow Your Business. Read the subtitle.
Age of Disruption.
Can you just say it, just for the benefit of those who are not on YouTube, could you just read the title, subtitle, and author?
Sure. The author is Mark Monchuk. It's Monchek. It's called The Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Disruption. Here's what's, pardon me?
Is something ringing? Okay.
Could
you just say the title again?
Sure. The Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Disruption. Mark Monchuk. Here's what's great. It's brief. It's not a long book. It's an easy read. He's got great examples in it. It is very pragmatic. You can implement his suggestions easily. Very readable, very useful. And he's an incredible consultant and coach. So well worth your read.
Excellent. And do you have any other action steps you'd like people to take today in addition to what I said?
So I think one of the things that would be really useful at this point for people to do is to reflect on who've been the partners that they've had experience with that have worked and who haven't. Just put a line down your sheet of paper, worked, didn't work. And then look at why. Sometimes we are the problem, and sometimes it's we didn't choose well, but you need to know the difference.
Oh, that'd be very interesting. And perhaps people could look at the first thing, did they choose the right partner? But if they want to get the 5 gold stars, they can look at each one of these 5 criteria and see if it didn't work, was it, or if it did, was it the right partner? Was it that you defined the results and the boundaries? Was it that you leveraged? Was it that you found new opportunities? And was it that you committed to each other and to ongoing learning? So that would be very interesting. We would love to hear from you. You can let us know on LinkedIn, Lois Sonstegard or Aurora Winter on LinkedIn. We'd love to get a DM. And Lois has also got her website, Start with Collaboration. We would love to hear your stories. Okay, so next podcast, we're going to go deep, more advanced, the blueprint for collaboration. Lois has got a lot of expertise here, and she's going to be sharing it with us. And again, my guest today is the queen of collaboration, Lois Sonstegard. Her website is Start with Collaboration. Her new book coming out soon is Start with Collaboration. Her LinkedIn is Lois Sonstegard, and also Start with Collaboration on LinkedIn. And I'm Aurora Winter, the creator of the Spoken Author Method, and I'm on LinkedIn at aurorawinter.com, and we would love to hear from you. So don't miss next one. It's about the blueprint for collaboration. This is where we're going to get into the more advanced stuff. So if you're already running a business, you don't want to miss this next show coming up. And now you always like to end with a little comment or quote to put a little ribbon on the show. What have you got for us today,
Oh,
Lois?
I do. Won't disappoint on this one. This is a little bit of an adaptation to Mark Monchuk in his Culture of Opportunity. And he says, collaboration creates wealth through a careful interplay of creativity, innovation, technology, and relationships. So ponder that one.
I love it. That's absolutely fantastic. All right. So we will see you next time, Lois. And for the listeners or watchers, we hope to see you next time as well. We'll be talking about the blueprint for successful collaboration. Lois talked about a few things that we talked about on previous episodes. So if you missed those, you can go back and watch them and learn more about the neuroscience and the flow of collaboration and other goodies too. All right. Bye for now.
Thank you.